Imagine the unthinkable. The heart of American power suddenly swallowed by darkness, not during war, not by sabotage, but by a quiet failure that no one saw coming. On a cold evening in February 1929, the White House, the most protected building in the United States, went completely dark, and with it vanished the comforting illusion that modern technology had made America untouchable. At the time, electricity was still a relatively young miracle, and Washington, D.C. depended on aging power infrastructure that had grown rapidly but not carefully. That night, a routine overload at a nearby power station triggered a cascading failure, knocking out electricity across several government buildings, including parts of the White House itself. Lights flickered, phones died, elevators froze between floors, and security systems, primitive by today's standards, were rendered useless in seconds. Inside the White House, President Herbert Hoover and his staff were caught completely off guard. Candles and oil lamps were rushed in from storage, casting long, trembling shadows across former presidents. Secret Service agents moved through the halls with flashlights, unsure whether the blackout was accidental or the beginning of something far more dangerous. In an era when political radicalism and anarchist threats were real fears, no one could immediately rule out sabotage. What made the moment more alarming was that communication with the outside world was nearly impossible. Telephone exchanges were down, and radio communication was unreliable within the building. For nearly an hour, the executive branch of the most powerful nation on earth had no clear way to coordinate with the military, Congress, or city authorities. It was a chilling preview of how fragile national security could be when dependent on a single, invisible system. Newspapers the next morning tried to downplay the incident, describing it as a temporary inconvenience, but behind closed doors, government officials were shaken. Engineers later confirmed that the outage had not been caused by attack, but by overloaded circuits and outdated safety mechanisms that failed to isolate the problem before it spread. In simple terms, the system had no shock absorbers, and when one part fell, everything went with it. The blackout became a quiet turning point. It accelerated federal investment in more reliable power grids and emergency backup systems for critical buildings. Over the following years, generators were installed, electrical lines were modernized, and new security protocols were developed to ensure that no president would again be left in candlelight during a crisis. Yet the public largely forgot the incident, overshadowed by the Great Depression that would soon grip the nation later that same year. Today, when we think of threats to national security, we imagine cyber attacks, terrorism, or foreign espionage. But that night in 1929 delivered a humbling lesson that still matters. Sometimes the greatest danger comes not from enemies, but from the systems we trust without question. The White House did not go dark because America was under attack. It went dark because progress had moved faster than protection, reminding the nation that even the strongest symbols of power are only as secure as the wires behind the walls.